All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Camp Content, the podcast that everyone is watching and listening to because they want to learn about content marketing and revenue drivers in 2024. I don't know if everybody's listening, but you should be because this is going to be a great episode. I am excited to welcome. Today's guest is Travis Janko, who has 25 years of experience and background in sales leadership and now operates a SaaS sales recruiting agency. He's also a hunter of purple squirrels and unicorns, an expert at herding cats, a speaker, and an author, and that's straight from his LinkedIn bio, which I love, by the way. Travis has participated in a $50 million Series C funding round, an IPO, and acquisitions worth $317 million and $3.5 billion. He has hired over 500 sales professionals, and if you're a business owner, hiring people is a daunting task, never mind salespeople. And he now runs a firm specializing placing sales talent in SaaS startups. I love how specific that is. In addition to his recruiting work, Travis is a published author and operates GSD Coach and Recruiting with his wife, Angie. They focus on recruiting the top 5% of sales talent and also run Done, a company that provides project management, coaching, and training. In this episode, we're going to jump into Travis's transition from sales leadership to recruiting, his approach to business, and his strategies from his latest book. So, without further ado, let's get on into it. Travis, thanks for coming on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Molly.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you because I love sales, and a lot of people don't love sales. And I have had really good luck, dumb luck with hiring. I think I have a great team, but I know a lot of people really struggle with it. So I think you're going to provide a lot of good information today that the listeners will actually find helpful. So. Can you give me a little background, like not background, but like a snapshot of the company? Like, how many employees do you have? How many clients do you have? Where are they located? Kind of like a little Shark Tank summary, if you will.
Yeah, super short version. We're running our business differently than most people would expect. Our employees are my wife and I. That's it. So we're running a 7-figure-a-year recruiting firm with 2 people.
Amazing.
Plus, well, actually, we're running 2 businesses. We also have Done, so we just use the same process. Employees all over the U.S. and Canada. When we started this, I realized I wanted to do 2 things. I wanted to stick with what I know in my wheelhouse and what I like. And I led salespeople for years in the SaaS space, in the startup space. So that's what we do. We recruit for people in the SaaS startup space. I also am very comfortable with the US and Canada. That's where I've been working for years. So that's where all my clients are. How many clients do we have? Typically juggling anywhere from 8 to 12 at any given time. Once max was 22. That's too much. 2 people cannot successfully place candidates with 22 companies at once, but we've tried it.
Check that off the list. Yeah.
Check it off. Yes.
That's amazing. I'm sorry, were you about to say something else?
No.
Okay. So, right on. So there's just the 2 of you. That's pretty impressive to be doing that much business with just the 2 of you. So you must really have a good handle on your efficiencies and automations. And I mean, you've been doing this a long time. So, how have you seen that industry change? You know, I love that you're very specific with staffing SaaS companies. So is that something you've always been interested in? I would imagine there's probably a high need for that because there's a lot of turnover and a lot of new products all the time, right? It's never ending.
There really is. And the thing about it, I've had this firm for 8 years, and up until COVID it was pretty much the same thing. Like I knew what companies wanted, companies kind of knew what they wanted. The idea was we're doing well, let's hire more people so we get a bigger evaluation because we're bringing on new clients. Then things changed when COVID hit. Everybody stopped hiring in the entire world. And that stopped for probably 6 months. And then what happened is the companies who were affected positively versus negatively, in other words, the companies like Zoom is a great example. Companies where they were growing without even maybe changing the way they had done their business. They had to hire, and they had to hire a lot. So what happened was these companies that were growing started doubling, tripling, quadrupling down and hiring way too many people because they were in the right place at the right time. And we know what happens when you do that. Then it started evening out where the playing field was more open again. And, now people are remote and you can hire from anywhere. You live in Costa Rica, you can hire somebody from Costa Rica. It doesn't really matter. As long as they have a U.S. address for your insurance and all that kind of stuff. But what happened was the companies that spent so much time hiring, now the playing field was even, and now they start laying people off.
Right.
So you do that roller coaster, and it's never ending. And what has happened now is it's the hardest job market for candidates that it's almost ever been. It's really hard. It used to take somebody who wanted to find a job a few weeks, maybe a month. I'm talking to A+ candidates who have been out of work for 9 months and can't find a good job. Right. Part of the reason is they jumped at just the money a couple of times during the last few years, and they jumped into companies that weren't the right fit, and so now they're being a lot more selective. It's also much harder for companies who are hiring now, because you would think because there's more inventory, you would actually have better shot, but it's the opposite. Because there's so much noise and so much inventory, you run an ad today, and instead of getting like 15 applicants, you get like 1,500 applicants, and none of them are qualified.
Right.
And now you don't know what to do with it. I shouldn't say none. Very, very few.
Right.
It's just auto apply type of thing. So
right.
Now, as somebody hiring sales talent, you need to figure out where to go find them. You also need to be unique and different, because they're only going to go work for the best companies now, because they've already been through this layoff over and over type of thing.
Right. Exactly. That's pretty interesting. I've experienced that even just in my little world of hiring and the resources that I've used, and how many more applicants there are on that platform now. And same thing, like I used to be able to put a job listing up and get like decent resumes and decent information back, and then now it's just like, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is applying for jobs. I'm like, this has nothing, like you didn't even follow the basic instructions, and that's on a very like simple hire for basic stuff. So I can only imagine. And then I know the hidden job market is a real concern too, right? Because a lot of jobs are just like word of mouth and your friend of a friend or a connection. And so those really good jobs are hard to place. Are you seeing like it seems like a lot of people don't want to go back to the office too. Are you seeing any issues with that? Is that a thing?
It is a thing. So we went from most of the world being in the office to none of the world being in the office to now some people are going back hybrid or full-time. And so you have some candidates who have been dying to go into the office. They really want to work with people. But most don't want the commute. Most realize they're more effective and more efficient not being in an office. And they've moved to another state. But now yet there's companies saying, hey, you got to come back to the office. And so, Molly, for me, I love that. Because what I basically do is I go find those companies through research that are saying, now you have to come back in. Right. Now we're making these changes. And I go find those top candidates. And I
want it, right?
They're willing to talk to me because they're number one in their company. They love it, but they don't want to go back in.
Right.
And it's also much harder if you're looking, if you're in DC and you say, I want the best candidate in the United States, that's this big of a field. If you're in DC and you say, I want the best candidate just in DC, you're very limited in the number of people that you can go after. So I'm also seeing companies make better hires than they've ever made because they have a bigger field to choose from, if that makes sense.
For sure. I mean, it's like our business too. It really increased quite a bit because, when we went fully remote, we could work with people from all over the world. And so our client base is international at this point, just from referrals and word of mouth and everything else. But, we don't turn that down. Why would we? We'd be crazy to.
Exactly.
Amazing. So what are some of the, I have some questions here, but they're not always that great. So what motivated you to transfer, you prepare them and then sometimes you just bag the questions because they're not great. What was the motivation between going from that, sales leadership to starting your own recruiting agency? What was that spark?
Boy, that's that's a long one. I'll give you the condensed version. So I got into recruiting because there was a problem that I had. One of the companies that I was at, they were getting me tons of candidates to interview. like literally 4 or 5 interviews every single day.
Okay.
And I'm doing that instead of working with my team.
Right.
And I was interviewing people that I didn't want to hire. So they were great culture fits. I might go have a drink with them, but they weren't great salespeople. And
Right.
I had big, huge goals to hit. I didn't have time to hire not good salespeople, but I had to because I had a quota. So I would go to the recruiting department. I would tell them what was up. They would say, cool, we got it. And then they keep giving me these same people.
Right.
So I just decided I have 2 choices. I can just complain about it or I can fix it. So I went out and taught myself how to be a sourcing recruiter. I basically studied, I watched videos, I read books, I talked to experts, and I figured it out. And I started getting up at 4 a.m. every morning, 7 days a week. We're business owners, you understand this. This was when I was working for someone though, 4 a.m., 7 days a week, sourcing candidates. And I got really, really good at it. So much that my first startup, there was 35 of us when we started. We had huge growth goals to grow to about 300 in 3 years. We actually grew to 600 in 3 years, and I personally found about 250 of those people.
Wow.
And then I just realized how good I was at this. And so when I went to my next startup, I was the first hire, and I was building IKEA desks in the dark with a flashlight, closing deals on my cell phone, sourcing candidates. We hired 3 outside firms, and after a week I fired all of them, because they were just sending me a bunch of bad resumes.
Right, not doing the work.
Yeah, I went and did the same thing myself. We grew to 150 people in a year and a half. Both of those companies were acquired. So when it was time to start my own business, it was kind of a no-brainer. It was going to be something in sales coaching or in recruiting. So I started out, Molly, doing both. And I realized you only have so much bandwidth. So I stuck with what do people need the most? Where do they struggle the most? And it isn't how do we train and coach our salespeople. It's how do we actually find an A-plus person? Like, where do we go find them? Where are they hiding? Those unicorns and purple squirrels you talked about. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I started doing 8 years ago, and it's been getting better and better since, and we're helping more people along the way.
That's amazing. I think the work that you're doing with the sales professionals in particular is really important because people are not really good at sales, right? And that's probably the first thing that most companies want to do, is a smaller company anyway, is going to be really motivated to hire salespeople. They want to get that off their plate as soon as possible. But and I know that just doesn't work, because if you haven't actually figured out how to sell your product and the nuances and the feedback that you're getting, there's no way you can train anybody or give them even the resources or guide them in any kind of way. So, you must deal with that a lot, right? With like trying to find the right fit, and then vetting your clients, right, is probably a huge part of your business. Are they even ready for what it is that they're asking for?
That's one of the first questions that I ask. So when I'm talking to a potential client, and I'm vetting them to make sure that we're going to be a good fit and good partners, one thing is walk me through what your onboarding process looks like. Walk me through what your process and playbooks look like, your training. If you have a current team, walk me through how they've been doing. If you don't, and you're founder-led, how have you been doing? And walk me through what your interview process looks like. And then finally, tell me who your perfect candidate is. What does that profile look like? And most of the time, those questions aren't all able to be answered because they hadn't been thought about yet, right? We know we need to hire because I don't want to sell anymore, or we know we need to hire because our product's doing great and we need to add on, or the investors told us we have to hire, whatever that looks like. But I find myself oftentimes telling a potential client that they're not ready yet and that they should fix A, B, C, and D first, because otherwise we're going to hire somebody for them. They're not going to have the process for them. They're going to realize, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? And they're going to go somewhere else.
Right.
So yeah, usually it's when we're ready, and I always tell people, know when you're ready and know who you need to hire before you start getting that hire. Once you figured that out, I can help them find those A-plus people. But again, keep in mind, Molly, that A-plus talent, as we mentioned earlier, they've been through this thing. They only want to work for the best leaders, the best companies with the best products. And I know everybody feels they're the best leader with the best product and but if that was true, everybody would be the best, and that's not possible.
Right, exactly.
So what you have to do today to earn top talent is you have to be different. You have to be unique, and you have to stand out. You have to have people finish that first interview with you and go, wow, they have it down. But oftentimes I get a candidate that calls me and says, I'm out. Like, have you talked to these people? And so sometimes we need to fix things again. It's all about process. I think everything in business is about process. And my advice to somebody who's recruiting is you should prepare for recruiting and hiring just like you prepare to present to the board. Like, literally, it's that important. Because otherwise you're going to spend $100,000 hiring somebody or whatever that number is, plus probably 2 to 3 times that, and all the resources you put in and all the money they didn't make because they didn't hit their numbers in your time that you had to put with them, and then you start over. So it's do it right the first time is the simple version. We lost your volume.
I was yelling at my dog, so I muted myself.
I heard him.
Yeah. I'm like, girls, there's a lot of it's very empowering to tell a client no or say no thank you sometimes, especially as a business owner, because you learn over time that all money is not good money, and some clients will take all the air in the room and occupy every team meeting and just really make your life suck, and so, but at the same time, having to tell a large percentage of your discovery calls, sorry, you're not ready, must make it more challenging for you and to fill your pipeline at times, right? Because you're probably saying you're not ready more often than not.
I would say yes and no. I learned a long time ago, I taught myself, I'm only bringing on clients that make sense, that, I have the red flags, green flags, yellow flags. I'm bringing on a client that makes the most sense to work with, but also I don't want to work with a client that's not ready because we're trying to accomplish something that's not going to be accomplished. It's kind of like running that race around the track, except there's barricades halfway through. What's the point of starting the race? And so, Yes, I tell people no, that they're not ready often. But the nice part about that, Molly, is by the time they are ready, we can move fast and efficient. And I've already worked with them, and it's kind of like that. We had a horrible hailstorm here in Denver, and we're getting our roof repaired coming up. But it's kind of like 3 doors down, one person went up on our neighbor's roof and said, hey, you guys actually don't need a roof. It doesn't need repaired. Everybody else around you does, but it doesn't. That's who we're working with, because he actually was honest and said it's not time, you're not ready. And that's the way I look at it, is if you tell people the truth, most of them will appreciate that, and most of them will come back later when they are ready, because unfortunately in business, some people are so desperate that they're trying to close business that they shouldn't be closing for right now.
I mean, especially in this market, it's a harder time than it was before, so it's hard to turn down clients. But yeah, if you're not really clear on what your product is and what your sales cycle is and your onboarding, which I would imagine most people don't. Now, are you working with what is the company size of the people that you typically work with?
Typically, for the most part, founder-led SaaS organizations that are usually between like 1 million and 10 million in annual recurring revenue, so pretty small. They're usually at that point, they've made the mistakes along the way, they've kind of figured it out, they've probably made a couple of bad hires. Most likely they don't have a sales team, or it's super, super small. And now they're looking for that first hire. And then that's where we need to figure out, why are you hiring? What are you trying to accomplish? Because sometimes we're trying to accomplish the wrong thing. Sometimes we're saying, I want to get out of sales.
Right.
But that's not necessarily a reason to hire. So we need to figure out, what are the goals? What are you looking for? But that's who I typically work with. And I would say more times than not, I'm helping them hire their very first salesperson. And that's very niche. Yeah. Because a great example is, if this is a 10-person company and the founders have done all of the selling and they want to hire their first salesperson, we have to make sure we hire somebody who's already been a founding member, and not somebody from a 5,000-person company like a Salesforce. Right. Because it's in those large companies, there's a person that does the thing. In the small companies, you are the person that does the thing. Yeah. And that's hard to translate. So again, you have to know who you need to hire, I guess, is the easy way to say that.
Amazing. I love it. So, okay, let's talk about the GSD coach in recruiting. Like, is that kind of do you refer people to that arm of things when they're not ready, or how does that play into the main business?
Yeah, I mean, that is my main business, is the recruiting. The coach just stuck with me years and years ago.
Gotcha.
One of my leaders said, I was asking a couple of your team members to describe you in 4 words or less, and they said he gets shit done.
Yeah, I love it.
And
Oh,
so
GSD, I love it.
GSD, yeah. And so he said you should name your team GSD, and people have since called me the GSD coach. So I just added recruiting onto it when I opened up my business. Molly, it's amazing that I left that in there, because out of like the 20 spam emails I get every day, about half of them are helping me to sell my coaching services that I don't even have. If they literally looked at my profile, it says I don't do coaching, I do recruiting. But anyway, that's where it is. So yeah, my main business is recruiting. The thing is, our other business, Done Project Management, that my wife mostly runs, she was leading project management teams for years. And so a lot of times when I'm working with larger clients, they may or may not be ready to hire, but they may have an internal system issue that needs to be fixed, and she can come in there and help them do that. So I refer business to her company, she refers business to my company, and we both help each company become a bit more efficient.
That's a modern day romance right there. I love it. I think that's fantastic right there. That's how come on, man, it doesn't get any better than that. All right, so let's go into our speed round portion of the podcast. So it's always a good time. So what is the number one trait that you look for in a potential sales candidate?
Boy, the number one, it's hard to narrow it down to one. There's about 10, but I would say probably number one is coachability. The thing is, if they've already figured it out and they already know it all, they're never going to learn anything. And when you go into a new company, you're going to learn new things and find out new things, and you need to be coachable and adaptable. But I think it's hard to narrow it down to just one. But I think that we'll use that for the speed round.
I mean, I think that's good in life. You need to be coachable, right? Like the second you think you know everything, watch out, because here comes the universe.
Exactly.
Tell you otherwise, yeah. Okay, IPO or acquisition, what do you find more exhilarating?
Acquisition.
How come?
I would say, well, I've been through all. The first one, the IPO, is exciting. We got all kinds of money that came in, all kinds of things happened, and then all kinds of big changes happened, of course, when that happened. The acquisition I find more exciting purely because of the payouts, I would say. One, to me, but two, both of those companies, their goals, from the time I started, I knew their goals were to be acquired. And so to be able to see them succeed and to be able to have those things happen. The second company I worked for that was acquired 2.5 years ago, the owners are still on board. So they've got their money and they're still on board helping that dream go along. So it's pretty cool.
That's super cool.
I like both, though. I'll tell you that.
Right on. I mean, it's a very exciting world, especially when it's going well,
Yes.
Okay, Kauai or the Colorado mountains, which is your preferred getaway?
Oh, Kauai. I mean, we live in Colorado. We love Colorado. We love going up in the mountains and hiking. My wife and I are beach bums. Literally every year we spend a couple of weeks in Kauai on the beach, and I think if we lived there, it would be very difficult because I would be here on a podcast and I would be seeing the ocean right out the window, kind of like what you have behind you there. But yeah, Kauai for sure. Nothing wrong with Denver, except for it's going to be about 100 degrees today.
Yeah, exactly. People are losing their minds, I would imagine. I love that too. I love being near the ocean as well and being in nature. It really... I like to work hard, and I don't mind spending a lot of time at my desk, and obviously you too, waking up at 4 a.m. I like to get shit done as well. It's definitely, I love checking things off of lists. I got multiple to-do lists everywhere, every day, but I also really like that reset in nature. It's a really good balance for my overactive brain is to just be barefoot in the same.
Nature's important wherever you are. I mean, I talk to too many people who are just burnout and stressed because they're just on the hamster wheel, just continuously going. And a lot of people still think, even in today's world, that if I just work more, I'll get further. And it's not really about that. It's about being efficient, but you also have to stop and recharge your mind and your soul and your body. I mean, we take a walk 1 to 2 times a day.
Nice.
Out in nature, and whatever nature is to me is different than it might be for you or other people. But you're right. You need to find a place to go recharge, and you shouldn't wait until it's vacation time. You should try to do that every day if possible.
I agree. When I was in DC, I rode a bike for like 7 years until it got too cold, in the wintertime. And it really helped a lot because DC, when you're in a car, is an infuriating town. I mean, there's always some sort of motorcade or NATO's in town. I mean, you're just like, who's messing up my entire life today? But on a bike, you just zip around, and DC is a beautiful city. It's actually filled with a lot of green space and parks and beautiful, you know what I mean? It's a great place to be. And so I was able to find a unique balance there of like getting some air and sunshine every day while also living in a city. So, you got to find a way, one way or another, right? You got to get that sunshine in. It's really important.
Agreed.
Okay, I have a wild card question for you. If you could go back in time and be the founding member of any company, what company would it be and why?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That threw me for a loop.
Yes.
I think if wow. I actually I think I'm going to go back to the first company that I worked with that was acquired. That was Trulia. So Trulia, Zillow acquired them.
Okay, yeah.
I was wondering if you were going to buy, sell, or rent a home, you would go to Trulia or Zillow.
Yeah.
I think that I would go back knowing what I know now and be a founding member, and they would have gotten where they wanted to go much faster and much more efficient. When I started, it was totally the Wild West. It was literally like what you would expect a startup to be, with kegs and basketball hoops and ping pong tables and people running around in bare feet and dogs running all over.
Right.
That's all fine, but there was no real process. It was just kind of everybody did everything, no specialization. And we worked through that and we got to where we needed to go. But if I could wind the clock back on day one and I could say, guys, if we did this thing, imagine how quick we would get to where we want to go. And also, we wouldn't have hired so many people that we had to fire because we hired the wrong people before we figured it out. Again, there's a lot of changes. I think that would have been fun. My second answer would be my business. It took us 3.5 years to figure it out. I was on the hamster wheel, stressed, all of the things, thinking I had to work 15 hours a day. And we had that aha moment, and it was a great moment. But it took us 3.5 years to get to that moment. And boy, if I could have done that from day one, I just imagine, how things, they'd be like they are today, but they would have been this way back then.
Wow. I heard that, but not to be cliche, but everything happens for a reason, right? So, I guess if you knew what you knew now 3 years ago, you'd really be ahead of the curve in the pandemic, that's for sure. But the whole world certainly has changed quite a bit. All right, so I have, this is everybody's favorite round. It's called Real or Fake. So I'm going to name some podcasts, and then you guess if they're real or fake.
Let's do it.
It's a crowd favorite. What can I say? Okay, The Hilarious World of Depression.
Jeez, it sounds like it should be a real one. Let's go with that just for fun.
It is real. I'm always just as surprised by these as you are.
Oh, wow.
Let's see. Masters of the Hustle.
Masters of the Hustle? That sounds like a real podcast to me as well.
It's fake.
Wow. It should be.
It should be. I had a guest on my podcast who actually is starting a podcast based on one of the fake podcast names. It was Marketing Over Bourbon, and we're launching it together. So you never know. Anything is possible. Good things happen on this. Okay, and then the last one is Startup Stories Unplugged.
That should be a podcast if it's not.
It's fake, but it should be real too. Okay, and then I got two more questions for you. What's the most influential book that you have read? It could be this year or of all time, whatever. But what book is the one that like really gets you going? And it's okay if you got 3. I'm cool with that too.
Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell.
Okay, that's a good one.
It is a absolute game changer for anybody who owns a business. You won't want to put it down. I'm impartial. I'm friends with Dan also, but even if I weren't, I would buy that book in a heartbeat.
Nice.
Second one is this one. So feel free to check this one out.
Yeah.
Pretty proud of that one. My wife and I are actually working on one that's much better than the first one. You learn as you go.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right on. I love that. I will check both. I've read Buy Back Your Time, but I went on this mission and I read like 135 books over a course of 3 years because I just wanted to educate myself in business development from people doing it currently. And I kind of got to the point where I was running out of books, and so I started to reread the books that I found really important to me and like study them a little more. And because I'm not trying to prove how many books I could read. I just wanted to fill this gap of knowledge that I had. And so I did that with all these books, but I always love a good book recommendation. And what is your favorite tool right now? Like it could be a tech tool or it could be anything really.
So I suffer from this thing called multi-tab-itis. And what that means is I typically at any given time have like 300 tabs open on my computers.
Travis.
And which is a problem.
Yeah.
I know that I have this problem. And so this tool called Workona, Workona, and it basically is like a life game changer.
Okay.
Now I might have 15 different categories where tabs are, but at any given time I only have a few tabs open.
Yeah.
Based on what I'm using, it's total game changer. Again, I still shouldn't have as many tabs open as I do, and my computer doesn't like me for it. But
yeah, I was going to say, your computer is probably like, here he goes again. Let me guess, more tabs. I can relate to that. And I read Cal Newport's Deep Work, like a couple years ago, and I started not implementing all of his tips, but just closing the unnecessary tabs and focusing on one thing at a time because, it's like we have the attention span of a water flea now, all of us. And so I go to LinkedIn to send a message and then I start scrolling and then, I've completely missed the point of what I was trying to do. But I will check that out because I also am like, my brain is going in a million different directions at all times. And so I will check that out and look into it.
Good deal. Yeah, I would say another great tool is just my top 5 list. It's not technology, but literally every morning I start out with the 5 things I have to get done today. Instead of having 50 or 60 things, these are the 5 that are going to happen. And if they don't happen, then they have to be first priority tomorrow. And if 3 days later they don't happen, they're not important, and we can get rid of them.
I like that. I kind of have a similar method. Like I will write out my to-do list, and then what I do is I prioritize the ones that will get me closer to a paid invoice, right? So like one of the greatest takeaways from reading all those books was take the straightest path to the money. And so I do the revenue generating activities first, and then I'll do the other stuff because sometimes, sending the follow-up on that proposal, that should be the first thing you do, not the thing you do at the end of the day, right? So that's how I prioritize. I don't know if it's working or not, but that's how I do it.
One thing I recommend is try early in the day to knock out that BHAG, that frog, that really, that's that one that you're looking at and you're like, I know it needs to get done, but these ones are easier, so I'll do these ones first.
These are shinier.
But it's just that sense of, you feel satisfied when you knock that big frog out.
Yeah, I try to work out every day on my treadmill, and that's a big one too, because it's like, okay, get it done, and I'll put my workout clothes on every day because then I'm just a jerk sitting around in my workout clothes all day if I don't do it, and so it helps. I'm like, okay, you're still in spandex. It's 4:00. Like, go get on the treadmill. But it's always a better day when I do it early. Before everything gets going, you really do feel really good about yourself. It's a good exercise. It's a good muscle to exercise.
It is. everything to us is a process that we follow. And so again, working out is one of the morning things that we do. It happens every day, and we can't have the excuse that we're on our computers, work calls, because we don't even turn on our electronic devices until we've done the things that are important to us in the morning, which is, having breakfast, working out, taking a walk, reading, having an actual conversation.
Right.
And then we dive into work, because work's going to be there, right?
It's going to be there.
As soon as you turn it on, and there's going to be a fire you have to put out. There always is. And the fire will be okay.
It'll keep burning without you until you go put it out.
Yep.
Yeah, I really like that. I might have to start doing a little bit more of that myself because, it's easy. I get up really early here in Costa Rica because I don't close my blinds, and I live right on the lake, and there's a volcano, and the sun rises. But I mean, it's like, why would I miss that every day, And so I'm up ridiculously early, but not for like a hustle culture reason. I just like to get up, and I spend a little time in my garden, and I hang out with my dogs, and I love that I have a couple hours before everybody else wakes up. But I think this idea of keeping your electronics turned off until those things are done is really smart. I might have to implement that because it's going to be there. Like you said, it's going to be there.
It is. And on the other end of that, if you're really trying to protect your time and you're trying to live the right life that you want to live, when you cut a boundary and this is when my day ends, you should do the same thing. So literally when we end our day and it's done, then we go check on whatever personal things might be happening, and then we shut our devices off again. So they're
good for you, man.
They're off from the time we stop until the time we start. Unless we're waiting for somebody to call us that's a family member or whatever, there's really no reason. There's too many things to do.
Right, we're not open heart surgeons. Nobody's going to die if I don't answer my phone for a few hours. Yeah. I'm with you on that. I really like that. That's really resonating with me. I think I'm going to do that because especially living in Costa Rica, and if I don't have anything else to do, I work too much. Like on the weekends, I started making French pastries just to keep myself off the computer, because otherwise I'll wander back over here and sit down, and next thing I know, I've done it again, right? So I definitely respect that hard boundary of creating a life you want to live. Right?
Well, and it all comes from blocking your time. So the way we started doing this was we found some major inefficiencies in our business. We were going from, like you said earlier, you have the LinkedIn message and the Slack message, and you have an email, and you have this project. Now I'm talking to a potential candidate, and immediately after that I'm talking with a partner, and immediately after that I'm talking with a client. And those are 3 different conversations. So what we did is short version is we blocked out every day of the week during work, and we blocked it in sections. So for instance, when I'm going to do my LinkedIn content, it's not on the fly. I have 3 hours blocked out, and that's what I'm going to do at that time, and that's all I'm going to do. And unless something that's a priority comes up that trumps that. But we have our entire work week set like that, and we thought, what if we did the same thing with our personal lives to make sure that the two aren't bleeding into each other? And so it's literally everything sectioned out, and it works. It might sound a little bit too process driven. Again, I'm married to someone who is a project manager for over 20 years, so everything is a process.
I mean, hey, listen, life moves fast, and it'll get ahead of you before you know it, and you look back and you go, what have I been doing? So I think it's great. I think intention is great. You're rocking your Hawaiian shirts. You're clearly, making time for the things that are important to you, helping other people to make more money. I don't know. I think you got it all figured out, Travis, so.
Well, Molly, I'd love to say I had it all figured out, but I think we're on the right path.
Yeah. I mean, aiming in the right direction. Like my dad would say, you got to stay in a moving forward program. So exactly. You just stay on track and you'll be all right. So, well, listen, Travis, I have taken too much of your time today, so we will jump off now. But thank you so much. All your links and stuff will be in the show notes. But what's the best way for people to connect with you if they have resonated with this content? Yeah,
I think they can. They can just jump on my website. All my contact information is there. It's travis@gsd-coach.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Insta or whatever. I prefer people email me. Every page in my website has my email. That I'm going to answer. Right now, since we've been talking, is you and I both probably already have like 20 to 50 messages in our social media, and sometimes those fall and get lost. But love to talk to anybody. This has been awesome, Ollie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Travis. I appreciate your time. I'm sure we'll talk again real soon. Thank you for coming on the show. And yeah, if you're looking to hire some people for your SaaS company, Travis is the guy to go to. That's a very specific thing, a very specific need. And if you have a SaaS product, you have investors and deadlines and goals. And he is the right guy to call to staff your company up. So on this note, the dogs are letting me know. Catch you on the next one. Thank you for tuning in to Camp Content.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Camp Content. This is Molly.
And this is Matt.
And we are Heartcast Media, aka Camp Content, and we appreciate all of your support. If you found this content valuable, please comment on social media, LinkedIn, wherever you find us, and we will make sure to comment back.
And be sure to go on and subscribe and like on your favorite platforms, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, you name it. Leave us that subscription, leave us that good review.
We'll love you forever. So until next time, be excellent to each other, and we'll see you next week.
Produced by Heartcast Media.